It's times like this when the power and the value of the STEM learning ecosystem's community of practice become very visible. Presented by STEM at Home, an initiative launched by the STEM learning ecosystem's community of practice, STEM Community Conversations is a series of conversations for teachers, school officials, community leaders, and the many others impacted by school closures and virtual learning. For those of you new to this initiative, the STEM Ecosystems, operated by TIES, which you can find at stemecosystems.org, harness the power of business and industry, funders and foundations, K-12 schools, higher education, and more to find solutions to common problems and to build thriving communities. Embracing this ecosystem way, these gatherings will provide a space and time for leaders to share common challenges, ideas, and resources. Conversations will revolve around successful models and new ideas to support STEM learning experiences during and beyond this time of social distancing. These are interactive conversations where you will have the opportunity to ask your questions to our experts. So make sure you enter your questions today by clicking that Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, where you can also upvote the questions asked by others. My name is Jeremy Shore, and thank you for joining us today for a conversation as we explore and uplift student voices. We're all doing what we can to speak with and advocate for as many students as we can. And although it would be difficult to represent every single story that's reflective of every child, we hope that the stories our student panel will be sharing with you today will inspire you to reach out to even more students in your communities and find ways to include them in the conversations that we're all having. I know I have a lot of questions for our students, and we'll get to those in a couple minutes. Again, please be sure to use that Q&A button both to ask your questions and to vote on the questions you see. Even if you don't have specific questions, it's really important that you look through the questions that others have asked and vote them up so we can see which questions are resonating with you. We'll be asking some of you to ask your questions live on air. I'm really excited to introduce our panelists for today. You might notice this panel looks a little bit different than the other ones that we've had in a really exciting way. We've had a lot of requests from everybody in the community to learn more about the experiences of students during this time, what their worries are, what they're excited about, what they're hopeful for, and what life is like for people trying to learn under these really extraordinary circumstances. Up first, we have Barrington Richards. Barrington is a chief science officer living just outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He's a rising senior at Upper Marion High School and enjoys rowing, crew, playing tennis, and participating in his school drama club. As a first-year CSO in the PA Seed ecosystem, his action plan focused on sharing the value of eSports in education, hoping that educators will work to engage students through electronic gameplay. So Berenson, when I think about students like CSOs and you know, organized events like eSports, and then I think about these times, I imagine that it's really hard to kind of have regular meetings. But what can organizations like the CSOs or other organizations be doing right now to support kids and learning during this weird time?
So a lot of what this Chief Science Officers organization has been doing and should continue to be doing is holding, Zoom calls, having discussion panels, I guess, like on their own time. On that you can be using Google Classroom, Google Meets. One of the safer options for cybersecurity purposes, but just keeping in contact with the communication is key during times like these. But yeah, basically.
Yeah, I know with my kids that the learning's important, right? Nobody wants to minimize that the learning is important, but that can continue. What's really hard right now is this isolation on everybody's brains, frankly, but particularly the brains of young people. It's not good for us. So yeah, any way that we can keep those conversations going and see faces and see our friends, I think is really helpful. That's great advice. Jacqueline Pereira is 15. She's a sophomore at Mountain House High School in Mountain House, California. She's been competing in Science Olympiad, Math Olympiad, and academic pentathlon and decathlon beginning in 3rd grade. She's reached the national and international levels in science fair. As an alumna of the 2019 Intel International Science and Engineering Fair, ISIF, the 2017-2018 Broadcom Masters Competition, and 2017 3M Young Scientist Challenge. She's a winner of the $10,000 Marconi Samueli Prize at the 2018 Broadcom Masters Competition and has won a 2nd place award in the material science category at the 2009 Intel ISEF event. Jacqueline, I don't know about you, certainly not your personal experience, but it seems to me that schools have kind of a tendency lately to sort of de-emphasize sciences. We're really, really focused on math and ELA, which are both really critical, but we've kind of pushed, especially K-8, but even high school science out to the periphery. Obviously, you're a scientist. Why is science education important? In particular, why is science education important for kids who don't plan to go into the sciences?
For me, I really see science as a way of directly asking questions and having a methodology in order to answer them with as much information as you can. And once you have that information, it also opens up doorways for even more questions. So really science is not like this specific field that's separate from math and English, but it's really a way of just learning more, um, learning more in your own way, essentially through your own exploration inquiry.
You know, I do this stuff, education consulting, all those things. My brother's a firefighter paramedic. My older sister is in marketing and editing, and my little sister swims with sharks for a living at an aquarium. And one of the things that I always talk about is that all of those jobs use the thought processes behind the sciences, regardless of whether or not they're specifically a scientific discipline. Thank you, Jacqueline. Jordana Pereira, no relation, just kidding. I think brother and sister, is an eighth grader at Altamont Elementary School in Mountain House, California. He's competed in science fair, science Olympiad, math tournament, and academic pentathlon at regional and state levels. He's won several top positions in regional and state competitions, such as the second place in alternative energy category at the California State Science Fair, and is an alumna of the 2019 Broadcom Masters competition. Most recently, his logarithmic wind turbine science fair project won third place in the 2019 National 3M Young Scientist Challenge, allowing him to attend the New York Stock Exchange closing bell ringing ceremony, which, by the way, is on my bucket list. I'm very, very jealous of you, Jordan. I also am super impressed because my science fair project was the thing with playing plants music. It was not scientific. It was total garbage. And then I look at logarithmic wind turbines and I feel really, really dumb. Jordan, you're the youngest on our panel. What are your fellow middle schoolers talking about or thinking about in regards to this shift in learning? When you talk to your friends about how you're learning now in this weird way, and yourself too, how is it going? What are you thinking? Is it working? How are you doing with all that?
So, most of my friends, like they see like we're getting enough work to do and everything. Although some people like disagree about like the exact amount of work, like maybe we should have a little bit more, a little bit less. And then like I know since I'm in eighth grade, most of my classmates are talking about our eighth grade promotion, which is currently not currently it's been canceled because of the coronavirus.
So what does that mean? That what is the eighth grade promotion and what are they going to do since it's canceled? Do you know?
One of my teachers has mentioned something about like a drive-through ceremony, but we're not entirely sure about what it's going to be.
So this is like graduation from eighth grade.
Yeah, pretty
And
much.
that's what's being changed or altered in some way. Jordan, thank you for being here. And last but not least, Annie Odjik. Sorry, Annie, you know, we practiced and then I messed it up like I always do. Annie Odjik is an electrical engineering and artificial intelligence major starting fall of 2020 at Stanford University. In 2018, she was recognized by Forbes in both the energy and youngest categories and was named to Forbes 30 under 30 for being an innovator and student researcher with 2 provisional patents. Her 2 innovations include a novel microwave cavity design that cooks food more uniformly while also saving energy, and a battery charging device that harvests indoor light energy to recharge small batteries. Annie has interned at Aero Electronics in Centennial, Colorado in their Engineering Solutions Center and conducted electroceutical research with bionode fabrication at Purdue University's Center for Implantable Devices in West Lafayette, Indiana. Annie was invited to the White House to meet former President Obama on 2 occasions after winning national science competitions and with her innovations. Annie has won, frankly, more awards than I even really knew existed. So Annie, could you pick a number from 1 to 12?
4.
Okay, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and he was the NC Wit AIC Indiana 7 years of first place awards in Indiana State Hoosiers Science and Engineering Fair. And the list goes on and on. I mean, this list is ludicrous in a very, very good way. Incredibly impressive. Annie, you're the member of our panel who's getting ready to leave for college, maybe. I'm wondering kind of how you think that everything that's going on is going to impact the start of your career, whether it's virtual to begin with or not. How's that going to change things, and how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think that everyone right now is experiencing so much uncertainty, and we really don't know exactly what's going to happen. I know that, at least from my perspective, I know that some students agree, disagree, that as high school seniors right now, we understand that we can't have, of course, those same ceremonies or those same events in the same way. And I think that we recognize that it's time to move on to that next chapter in our lives in whatever way that happens, whether it's digital or whatever. So I think that it's really reassuring to see schools caring, though, especially about, we don't want to just send students back into dorms next to each other to potentially become infected. And I appreciate the schools taking the effort and really looking at what is the best option. I know that some schools, when, like you mentioned, I'll be attending Stanford. I know they've been throwing out many options for the fall. One option is that we'll go fully virtual. Another option is that we'll have class outside in tents to socially distance, which is kind of interesting. I'm from the Northwest Indiana, Chicagoland area, so any nice weather in California I'll take as a plus. So we'll see really what happens. It's going to be interesting, and I'm glad that everyone's looking at all options thoroughly.
Well, I think that, I mean, it's a great attitude. It's scary, right? And confusing, but it also potentially offers some really great opportunities. Ty's team, Keisha and Angie and Veronica and everyone, I'd really love us to consider catching back up with all 4 of these folks in like 6 months or something, to see kind of how those things are going and what has really come out of everything. All right, so just a reminder, folks, just like every week, lots of questions, not a lot of time. So make sure to get those questions into the Q&A early. And please, please, please make sure to view and vote on the questions that resonate with you, so we can try to prioritize those. While we're waiting, I want to dig a little bit into what this reality is like for our students. So let's start with you, Barrington. What does your day look like? How do you manage your daily schedule? And what does your day look like in terms of academics and learning?
So on that topic, my mom, she's really into schedules and breaking down your day each and every day, especially during this time. So I did a work breakdown structure from project management, where you break down what you're going to do into subcategories, into even more subcategories. So like, let's say I wake up in the morning at 9 o'clock. That's 1.0. And then I go, brush my teeth. That's 1.1.1. And then 1.1.2, 1.3. And then, that's basically my day. But usually what I do is, wake up, eat breakfast, work out, then go into learning with my virtual school. Because I find that when I energize myself, with exercise, it gets me ready. It puts me in the zone to do my work. It could be different for other people, but for me, it works out with my work. But yeah.
Jacqueline, does that look similar to what your day looks like? How do you structure yours, or do you have any kind of different rituals or procedures that you use to make your day effective?
For me, because I have a lot of meetings throughout the day, so I actually use those meetings as like the framework for my routine. And in between each meeting, I set aside each chunk of time for essentially schoolwork, work on our face shields project for the community, or sometimes short brain breaks and meals. So yeah.
Jordan, when we think about this this kind of structure of time, and I know that you mentioned that there's sort of virtual learning for you as well. So in 8th grade, or 7th, you're going into 8th grade, right? So no, you're going into 9th grade. So in 8th grade, what platforms did you use? How did the teachers structure your day? So not the parts that you structure yourself, but how did the teachers structure your day to be effective? What does it look like when you log on in the morning, and how do you engage with your classmates?
So my teachers are only assigning a couple of conferences. I have 4 subjects for conferences, but one of my teachers teaches 2 subjects, so I only have 3 conferences. And since I only have 3 of them, I usually remember when it is. And then like I could just chat with my friends, like sometimes like go on to like Google Hangouts or send them email or something like that.
All right, so all of that seems relatively positive under the circumstances. We talked a little bit about this in our pre-conferences, and I know you talked about it with Daniel and Keisha too. But the folks who are on this call, they want to hear that stuff. That stuff's important. But what they want to hear most are 2 things, and the first is what's not going well, what could be better, because the reality is that probably this type of learning isn't going away. It's probably not going away in the short term, and models seem to indicate that this type of thing might start coming into our lives more frequently over time. So Annie, with your experiences, what could be improved? What would be a more effective way for you to learn?
Yeah, I would say that I know that right now, missing at least from like the national conversation and national perspective of things, I know that like there seem to be so many instances where I think that there's so many engineers and so many like innovators and people like myself who want to help, but we don't have the contacts necessarily with like medical professionals to see what those issues are. And I think that one thing that's been helpful during this time are the increase in like open source projects that give people the opportunity to add their thoughts, add their innovations, what they think could help, and also hearing from the medical community, like what the issues are. And I think that like linking those 2 together and making communication more open would help. I know that one thing that I have a friend who goes to Duke, and the other day he was telling me that one thing they're doing is their medical school and their medical hospitals are actually reaching out to the undergrad engineering students and saying, look, we need help with these certain COVID-19 innovations. Do you have any ideas? And now they've been running some things through different tests. They've been able to actually implement some things for that Durham, North Carolina area, and it's really helping the community. So I think that if we're able to do that on more of a national scale, that would help. With education-wise, I know that it's really hard during this time. Like everyone learns in different ways. So that's always been, I think, a thing with education, that it's always hard to even adjust in the classroom to get everyone engaged, let alone now digitally. And so I think that one thing that we know that it's not the answer to have just only everything paper. We know it's not the answer to have everything all digital. And so once we are able to finally go back, the answer will be somewhere in between. The question is going to be how far, which way, and how education will change at that point. It's going to be interesting.
So, Barrington, what about from your experience? What's not working? What could be improved as we think about this more? Annie's talking about, this, and I agree. This is the work of the organization that I work a lot with, Ties, how to make things more applicable in all situations. But right now, that means to a pandemic. How do we get kids really thinking to address those types of problems? But what else? What else could be improved in this process?
So, I have peers, friends all throughout the world who have different issues in like their different areas that they live in. So it ranges between, not being able to have the resources to actually do your work, not being able to access the sites like Zoom because of the Zoom bombings that have been occurring. Just regular stuff like that. We have to figure out a way, the administration has to figure out a way to make it more, a much more safe environment for the students. So we have to work on the technical aspect as well as how we're going to interact with each other, face to face in a way that's productive and safe for everyone. So that's something that we need to work on in the future, which I'm sure we'll get to that. But yeah, that's something that I've seen quite
You know,
frequently.
I think Barrington, that answer brings me to an interesting question that we have here from one of the people in the audience, Eric Meyer. Eric Meyer, I just unmuted you. I was wondering if you could maybe ask Jacqueline and Jordan your question about supports.
Sure, happy to. I'm really curious as a out of school time professional, I guess. What are the learning supports that you feel would be most helpful for you currently?
So I know personally, like so far distance learning has been okay for me. But I know I've heard from some other students and from teachers as well that sometimes like managing their time is actually one of the biggest challenges because so as high schoolers we don't have any school bells anymore to structure our day, and for some people assume that high schoolers already have it down, but they might not really have it down yet. So yeah, and because communication is also a two-way thing, sometimes either technology issues or sometimes lacking the drive to learn can be a big issue for making sure everyone gets the help that they need.
Yeah, I think, you know, from my experience, we have this situation where this is new, obviously. It's also really hard for adults and young people to learn in this way. And then if you then run into a technology issue on top of all that, sometimes some people just sort of throw in the towel. You know, they're beaten down already, and then that happens, and they're just kind of out of it. I think you're exactly right. Whatever we can do to minimize those. Jordan, what about at the middle school level? What could you and your peers use as supports to make this learning more effective and to help?
So I've also been seeing like with my classmates a lot of technology issues where the technology becomes a barrier rather than a pathway to our online learning, because like sometimes or your internet would go out or your computer starts like malfunctioning or just dying while you're in a conference or something. But I think that this barrier could maybe help us because if we learn how to circumvent these issues and how to better deal with them in the future.
Yeah, I think that we need to continue to learn from this, right? I think we need to my concern, and I know I'm not alone, is that the school year is going to die down, you know, over the next 2 to 4 weeks, depending on your school district, and everyone's going to be so tired, actually tired of thinking about this, tired of facing the problems, that they're just going to kind of take a breath, which everyone deserves, right? That's a good thing. Except if we don't then sort of pick it back up and address those challenges, then when we come back in the fall, we won't be anywhere better off. I think probably no challenge is as big as the challenge of equity. And it's something that's been brought up a whole lot by other folks who've spoken on this show and by our communities. And so we have a question from Matt Williams here that I'd like maybe frankly all 4 of you to talk about in your experiences. Matt, are you there with us?
I am here.
Hi, Matt.
Can you hear me? Okay,
Yes.
great. All right. So my question is, what are some of your ideas on how we can make education more accessible during this time for students, especially for students without internet access and proper resources for online learning?
So obviously all of you have access, right? You all also, I'm sure, know how incredibly lucky you are globally, that you are in the overwhelming minority to have the level of access that you do. But you have friends, you have colleagues, classmates who have struggles with reaching this access. So what can we do to help? Annie?
Yeah, I definitely think from what I've heard from like friends and different things, friends and family friends, it's been incredible, first of all, to see the families stepping up, in the sense that I know of some families, a family friend of ours who has 4 kids at majority at elementary school levels, and the middle school sibling is doing a lot of help and doing a lot of teaching with the younger siblings, which is absolutely incredible. I know that one thing that I remember reading about is that some schools were, for students who didn't have internet access, like dropping off packets weekly at houses, or having where students could come at certain times and still obtain those resources, like as printed paper copies. I don't know. I mean, that's still something I think that's very hard to do during this time, because then that requires people to still be printing those things, and that's hard for a lot of people right now. And I don't know if there is a good answer. I do think that it's a wide range of people who have this issue. I know that even equity wise, my school in particular has for grades 5 through 12, they do one-to-one computer access, but K through 4 they don't. So a lot of the students still rely on the digital access as well, to whether it's to bolster their reading, whether it's to bolster other skills. And I know that for those younger students, it's harder because their parents are working, they can't really use their parents' computers. So there's a lot of juggling around with these different things. And I don't know exactly for the technology aspect, but I think that we do have to go a little bit back to paper. I know that that might be part of the answer, but.
Yeah. Barrington, what about you? What do you see with classmates, with friends, anybody who doesn't have the level of access that you do? What are the challenges that you're seeing there, and how do you think we might address those challenges?
So branching off of like just, like the friends who are near me, places in like, New York, places that are like densely populated, New York being like around like 19 million people, they have kids roaming around the streets who don't have access to these computers and electronics that they need to do distance learning. They also much of their time and resources they depended on the schools to give them like supply them with these resources, and now that they don't have that, it puts them at a real disadvantage. And I fear that in the future, it's going to create an even wider gap with the people and their age group. And so we really need to address that. And ways to address that would be, like Andy said, dropping off, like going back to paper, just something as simple as that. Even though that creates like a little, it's kind of hard to do that for each and every student. We have to figure a way around that. Again, I don't have a good answer for that, but that's just one step in the right direction, I feel.
Yeah, and Barrington and Annie, I want to be clear. You guys seem kind of bummed that you have to say I don't have a good answer for that. We've had just right here over the last several weeks, some of the smartest people who have ever lived in education and policy and all that stuff, and their answers are largely, I don't know what to do. We know we need to fix this. We know we need to make this better. Here's some steps, but it's not a snap your fingers and change it. Jordan, it looked like you wanted to jump in and say something. What does this look like for you and your friends, and what do you think we might be able to do to address this equity issue?
So what I think what could potentially be used for like younger kids as a solution is that like maybe we could have like using like what Annie said, paper and again, but like having like a time where you could like where parents like every week could like pick up and drop off assignments for people to get them, or maybe even have like large signs or something like that so the parents can drive by and stay in their car and still see the assignments while practicing social distancing and not infecting anyone else.
Yeah, I think absolutely. For those of you who don't have a solution like this, what Jordan's talking about, there's just as an example, there's a district in Ohio that I do some work with, Oberlin, and they, in order to keep their bus drivers still employed during this time, are making breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Their bus drivers drive their entire bus route every single day, both the morning and the afternoon bus ride every single day. But instead of kids on the bus, it's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's homework packets. It's boxes to turn into homework. It's all of these things so that they can distribute. And parents know they've got 2 or 3 opportunities every single day to get out and grab meals for their kids, as well as exchange work. So I'm going to switch this conversation just for a couple minutes to how this is kind of mentally impacting the 4 of you. And then I think that based on the questions that are being asked, there's some really good ones. I want to close out the conversation at the tail end with a dive into what can we be learning from all this to change education, change policy. But to kick that question off about how this is impacting everyone, Gilda Wheeler is on here, I think, and I'm going to unmute you, Gilda. Can you ask your question about the impacts that you were asking in the Q&A?
Hi.
Hi,
I think
Gilda.
I'm unmuted.
You are.
Okay. First of all, thank you so much for bringing student voice to this conversation. It's really valuable to hear from young folks. I was wondering how you're all dealing with the emotional and psychological aspects of isolation.
So, Jacqueline, what about you? How's this impacting you, and how are you coping?
I would say like there are some days where I really do miss like face-to-face interactions with my friends and my classmates. On the bright side, I have my brother at home. You know, we're each other's new best friends. And
Is
but
that
then
the first time you've ever said that?
I think the second time. I do feel lucky though that our school district has had the technology access in order to at least keep us virtually connected to our teachers and classmates. So we're not all entirely alone. So yeah.
Annie, what about you? How's this impacting you? What's your coping?
Yeah, definitely. For me, every day, I always try and interact with one or two people just to keep in touch with. It's kind of just like a new habit for me because I always think of what I normally would be doing is interacting with a couple of people during the day. So I should keep going. Even though we have this social distancing, it doesn't mean that we don't have to be social. Like we should still be interacting with each other just virtually. And I know that one thing too, even though this is minor, I always like exercising outside. And now since the weather's starting to get nicer, the sunshine definitely helps. I see people in the neighborhood. Hi, how's it going? Hope your family's doing well. And just like those more normal conversations are coming back to life, even in small ways like that. And I also enjoy reading inspirational quotes. Like I really find it helpful to hear different inspiring things that other individuals have said. And I really find that it helps bolster just my mood during the day.
Annie, I'm sorry about this, but I'm adding a new assignment for you. The very last thing that we're going to say today before I close is you telling us one of the inspirational quotes that you really dig. So start Googling or reading or however you
Okay.
All right. Barrington, what about you? How are you coping and how's it impacting you?
Quite frankly, it's quite hard. For me and my family, we're very like a sociable, quite a type of family, and I do a lot of sports. I miss hanging out with my friends. You know, I have to turn to the virtual aspect of it. You know, playing video games, finding ways to go through like the loopholes, or finding loopholes, and it's incredibly tough. But you know, I do bike rides, say hi where I can. You know, stay 6 feet apart, of course, and yeah, I hope we can get back to regular life, but you know, it comes in time.
Yeah, and it's very hard. I would encourage all of you and everyone listening to do two things. The first is make a list of everybody you can think of, and just text or call 2 or 3 or 4 of them every day to check in. I think it makes a big difference to ourselves and to those people. I made just a quick line of code in Google Sheets that randomly spits out 5 of them to my email every day to remind me to call those people. And the other is it's a learning opportunity, because how those of you who are extroverts are feeling right now is how your introverted friends feel when they're in big crowds and around lots of people all the time. And it's kind of the first time I think that extroverted people have had the opportunity to really feel what that feels like. Not that that's a good thing, but it gives us an opportunity to put ourselves in the shoes of other people, and to think. To close us out on this, Jordan, what about you? How are you coping? What's a struggle, and how are you managing to stay kind of sane during this time?
So I talk with my sister a lot now because we don't have any other friends at home anymore because we're all always stuck at home. Sometimes we go outside, bike around the block, and sometimes like we go look through our old like building kits and stuff like that, like start like building something. or we also started doing our facial project now.
Yeah, staying engaged, right? Keeping your mind active, making the time go by. I know that for me at least, the worst days I have are the days when I say, you know what, I've had a long week. I'm just going to lay around and I'm going to read and play video games today and not really do anything else. And by the time that day is over, it's not a great day. It's really important to keep our minds active. All right, so I'd like to, this last 20 minutes or so that we have, I'd like to really dig into what we can learn from the way education has shifted. And I want to start that with a question that's here. There's not a real name, so I'm not going to go to, but KKM says, how has the amount of time spent in a class, in conversation with friends and studying alone changed during this time from the prior normal? So I'm going to start there, just that kind of real baseline question. How is, in terms of distribution of work, your time different now than it was when you were still in school? And then I want to expand on that a little bit. So who haven't we gone to in a couple minutes? Jacqueline, I think. Jacqueline, how does it look different now versus then?
For me, I definitely say that in terms of the workload, it feels lighter because I've actually been able to get my work done faster. And I think that's really because compared to normal school, we don't have some of the transitions like switching between classes, having brunch and lunchtime as a set block. And also, of course, sometimes socialization during class. But I feel it also helps us so in a time when like our schedules are a little wonky because we're all staying at home, I think it also helps me focus a little bit more on my schoolwork and on my social life, being able to manage my time between the two.
It seems like there's a little bit more focus on what adults talk about a lot as work-life balance with school right now. It seems like there's a little more focus there. Which I think is a good thing. Barrington, what about you? What do you, other than the staying home part, what do you like better about how you're learning right now than how you typically learned?
I think times like these really build character, like to be really frank, because now we depend on each other as students. So I'm taking a German class right now, and we usually don't understand all the words. We can't always contact our German teacher. He has like a bunch of work to grade and stuff. So we've set up a group chat and like platforms like Snapchat, and we help each other with the homework in ways that we can. Where speaking tests, we find out ways to how to pronounce it in different ways, and like we go off each other. So I feel like that's something that I really like now. We can expand on each other and really get to know each other way better than before. So it's good.
Yeah, so more ways to collaborate, right, with our students, and also opportunities to kind of talk and dig in with our educators, as opposed to them sort of standing in the front and talking at us and then us kind of regurgitating. Jordan, what about you? What do you like about learning right now?
So one thing that I like about this new type of learning is because since we're practicing social distancing, similar to what Berenson said, we're also becoming more responsible because like we're respecting people's personal space and sheltering at home, but we're having like better hygiene and preventing spreading illnesses. And if like there are like other similar pandemics, or if you get sick, you could also like help like try to implement these again to prevent illnesses from spreading.
Absolutely. And Annie, what about you? What do you like? What lessons can we learn from this?
Yeah, I definitely think that it helps that we're learning different skills that we're going to need once we're older in the workplace, in the sense of that we'll realize that, oh, this is a skill that I might be missing. How can I use this time to work on that skill and like improve? And I think that there are a lot of digital resources out there now too. I mean, just there's so many websites that people can use to learn different things themselves. I mean, YouTube even, there's some great instructors that teach things on there, and it's so helpful in that sense. And so I think that we're going to other resources as well. And so sometimes it helps in the sense that instead of getting it only from one perspective, we get it from like 5 different perspectives because we're researching, hearing other people, the way they taught it, that might help us differently, that might help someone else. So I think that it also helps that during the day now, like exactly like Barrington was saying, that we're able to really lean on each other and do a little bit more collaboration. Everyone seems to be more digitally available now, so it kind of helps in that sense too.
So I think what I'm hearing all of you saying is, I'm going to say it slightly more bluntly. You guys are much nicer and more well-spoken than I am. Is less of a focus on a whole bunch of busy work and memorizing things and spitting them out, and more of a focus on the skills that will carry you into college, and skills that will carry you into careers, and actually having the opportunity to see how knowledge connects to the world as opposed to kind of connects to your book. And kind of along those lines, we have a question here from Angela Grouse. Angela, are you on?
I am. Thanks, Jeremy.
Could you ask your question about kind of the ideal learning experience?
Sure, gladly. I'd really like to thank all of you for participating today. Your input has been really insightful. The work that I do is a little bit different from a standard educator. I'm an education to employment director, and I provide career awareness and career exploration opportunities for students in our regional districts. And I'm trying to think of ways that are new and creative to reach out to students, because I appreciate, not everybody learns best in this particular setting. So I'm curious as to what has been perhaps your most positive or engaging learning experience in this new virtual education platform, something that really captured your attention and made you feel really positive as you left it. How was it conducted? Was it a larger group? That kind of thing.
Why don't we start with Barrington? What do you think? What was kind of the best learning experience that you've had so far?
So going back to my German class, I love that class so much. So going back to my German class, we had a project to do where in German we had to, we can make anything. So basically, in any instructional verbs, stuff like that. We were being very creative. I got to make scrambled eggs and do it off Deutsch, and everyone learned from each other in German. And then we got to take a video of ourselves applying everyone else's instructions, and I felt like that was really fun. But yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
bringing the fun and bringing the conversation. Jordan, what about you? What has been the best learning experience that you've had virtual this year?
So once my science teacher, he assigned us a hands-on lab experience for us to do at home. And so it was about the effect of sound waves in different mediums. So I had my sister help me with this. We got some different like plastic and metal utensils and a marble. And then we made noises above and below water, and then I had to dunk my head in the bathtub to listen to the noises underwater. But yeah, it was a fun experience to do it.
Yeah, and I think that, it's too early for you guys to know this for sure or not, but I predict what you're going to find is that in 40 years, when you think back to school and you can only name 5 or 6 of the specific experiences that you had in school because they were so long ago, those 2 are going to be 2 of the ones that you remember because they're novel, because they're enjoyable, and because the learning is directly applied to that activity. We've got a hard but really important question from our friend Sonia Pryor-Jones that I'd like to ask. And I think we're going to probably stop there on the audience Q&A, and I'll talk at the end a little bit more about that because I'd like each of you to share your passion projects with everyone here as well. But to kind of close us out, Sonia, this is such a critical question. Would you mind asking? If you're still there. Sonia, you still there? She maybe stepped away. That's okay. So I'm going to ask it for her. She's saying, what advice would these students give educators and policymakers to reimagine K-12 education? So this is still related to what we've been talking about, but I'd like to specifically focus on the policy side of the equation. You guys know that a lot of what schools can or can't do is up to them. And a lot of what schools can or can't do is dictated by local, state, and federal policy. A lot of the people who are on this call have connections to those policymakers in states across this country. So this is really an opportunity for you to influence potentially policy. So I'd like to ask Annie first. Annie, what should our folks that have those connections, what should they be saying to our legislators about this experience and what schools need in order to become more effective?
Yeah, I definitely think that it's going to have to be more of a policy making per state in a sense. I think that it's going to be really hard to have like one common national ground that's going to fix it for everybody. And I know that one thing that I was talking with a few of my friends the other day, at least from the Chicagoland area, when I went to California a couple of times and I saw schools that had like outdoor hallways, I was like in shock because for us, like we would be covered in snow in our area. But for areas like California, they might be able to have more instruction and open up sooner with schools that have outdoor hallways because they have more open spaces compared to schools like in my area where they're more narrow hallways. You have a ceiling and people are in more close contact. So I think it's really going to vary state to state for policymakers personally. But I do think that one thing that we're going to have to reevaluate definitely is going to be like for test scores. And I think that's really hard to do testing in some of these settings because everyone is in a different environment for that testing. And that's not necessarily fair. You know, there are different noises that people would have or different certain conditions that people would have that they need specified testing settings that they might not be able to have in their home situation. And so I think that for those settings as well, maybe it would even be that we wouldn't go as much on to just the test score for individuals and look more at maybe a portfolio of what they've developed or look at just a more cumulative looking at a person rather than just like a couple test scores.
So we need to be thinking about how we're assessing students, and we need to be thinking about the physical spaces, what they look like, how they're structured. That's not going to be an overnight change, but if we don't start now, when are we going to start?
Right. I mean, especially
in order to have the changes.
Right. With the second wave at some point coming here, I think that this is an ideal time for us to look into that and hopefully be able to get some of those things more in place. Like this time it caught us off guard, all of us, this entire pandemic situation. And so hopefully if we were to have a second wave, we'd be very prepared.
And to all of you listening, what an incredible, if you have connections to schools, what an incredible design challenge for schools to be thinking about. Both schools who are in the process of evaluating new construction or renovation, allowing students to be thinking about and solving ways that schools could be designed in order to limit interactions in times when that needs to happen. And for those districts, the majority who are not in the process of evaluating new construction or renovation, how can we take existing buildings and make those safer? Jacqueline, what about you? What do you think we should be thinking about, our policy leaders should be thinking about?
So I kind of have two things. So one of them, so it does kind of touch on like how students will be assessed in the future. And I think the question that's actually on the mind of a lot of my fellow high schoolers is how will colleges view a credit, no credit grade versus a letter grade for this semester? And in the long term, really, like people are wondering like, wow, this seems like a great idea right now. Like how would, it could impact their chances on college in the future. And so yeah, and the other thing is also, so obviously we know that face-to-face interactions with teacher may not be able to be 100% substituted for something else. But I think one thing we could do in the future is actually set up like a distance learning platform or an online learning platform that's already in place even during normal times. So maybe in the future during situations kind of like these, the switch to distance learning can be made much quicker, minimizing downtime for us.
Yeah, I think those are really good points. These are difficult things to solve, but important things for everybody who has those connections to be bringing up to start those conversations now, so that we can get moving towards a positive direction. All right, folks. Before we end, I want to make sure that all of you can see the passion projects of these four. When I was in high school, I was trying to be in a bunch of really, really terrible bands and playing a lot of video games and not a whole lot else, when the four that you have in front of you are really trying to change the world. So is anybody who wants to go first? Otherwise, I'll just kind of randomly pick. You guys never volunteer. All right, Jordan, I'm going to start with you. Can you tell us about your passion project?
Jordan, you're muted.
Oh, okay. So now that I'm unmuted. So what me and my sister are doing is that we are making face shields, and we've been printing and assembling these for 6 weeks, and we've already made over 750 of them. We've been giving them out to healthcare providers, frontline workers, elderly, and almost anybody in the neighborhood who could benefit from these. And we are using printing using a design that's already been approved by National Institute of Health. This is one of the face shields with the 3D printed frame. And then we added the transparency sheet that's been hole punched to fit onto it. So that way it will stay on. And then we can put...
Incredible. Jacqueline, what have the revisions looked like? How did you kind of evolve through?
So honestly, we kind of just like after we found, so we actually went through a couple different designs for our frames, and so we settled on this one because not only is it easy to print and it helps us maximize production, but I think it's also very versatile in general, being used. And yeah, so, and honestly, like when we first started, we didn't really think it would go this far. Like if we had told ourselves in the past, like it would have gone for 6 weeks, we would distribute it over 750 and printed a total like over 1,000 of these, like we probably would have laughed. But yeah, but honestly, like it isn't really about the numbers for us. It's more about being able to reach out to the community. And as long as there's a need for this, we're going to keep going and we're going to keep printing for these.
Being part of the solution. Very, very incredible. Everybody, there are links in the chat, and I think that maybe Keisha will put those back in there, or Angie, where you can, with all these projects, to learn more and also to be able to support and help. Barrington, what about you?
So mine's a little bit different. I'm holding a eSports informational virtually on a platform called Mixer. I'm going to be reshaping the message of esports in education. So basically that means I'll be diving deep with a couple of guest presenters, being like NASF, some colleges, Arcadia, Harrisburg. So it's pretty cool. We're gonna come together to present why esports is important to implement into education, as well as the job opportunities, the different social skills, and the networks you can create with it. So it's very important, and I feel like I should share it. So.
Awesome, Barrington. Thank you. I saw that Jacqueline just posted in the chat where you could Venmo to support she and Jordan's work. Barrington, if you wouldn't mind putting in there where people can find out more. Annie, I know that you're going to share your screen and share your project. So tell us about it.
Yeah, so it's just coming up right now. I hope, can you guys see it? Is it all good?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So I, as you guys know, I'm a high school senior, and a lot of my friends and a lot of my peers were talking with me about how one of the hard things right now is a lot of students who wanted to go visit colleges can't necessarily do so because of the entire pandemic situation and all the colleges being shut down, and also student admit weekends were all canceled. So different events like that weren't really available to us anymore. So I created this website. I've had a lot of friends throughout the nation that I've gained from past summer work experiences. So I created this website called Toolkit for College, and you can access, I see Jeremy just put it in the chat. It's called toolkit4college.wordpress.com. And on here, it's basically a lot of different resources for incoming freshmen to have college by college specific contact information. So as of right now, the website has been around for officially a month as of right now. And I took account this morning, and I've been so thankful and shocked by the tremendous positive response. I have on the website represented about 97 colleges it has different location information. You can see a map of the college, and then different current students as an alumni, as representatives that students can get in contact with, ask different questions that they might have if they're nervous about the fall. Different dorm information. Bed Bath & Beyond has a essential dorm list that's school specific that they can look at, and then also a countdown to when new student orientation or the fall is. So right now there are 167 students represented on the website, and they represent 97 colleges in 46 states and DC. So it really has expanded so fast in a month. And I've gotten a lot of positive feedback. So please feel free to share this website with whomever you think it would help. And also, since this is at the end of the call, and since it was my responsibility for a inspirational quote,
pick one to close us.
I would say one of my favorites is probably one that I had last week, which was, when everything seems to be going against you, remember that the airplane takes off against the wind, not with it, from Henry Ford. I think that that's really, especially coming from an inventor himself, but I think it's very interesting to think about that a lot of things work against everything. And we're right now in a situation where all of us are working against the pandemic, and we're trying to help out in our different ways. And so this was my way of helping out, just because I knew a lot of students and all of my friends it was great. I was able to stay in contact with a lot of people this way too. So please definitely share the website if you know of any incoming freshmen that would find it helpful. It would be great.
Annie, Berenson, Jordan, Jacqueline, thank you so much. Annie, that quote's perfect. We had the last several weeks, we had both Dr. Yang Zhao, who's one of the foremost thinkers in education, and Vint Cerf, who's one of the fathers of the internet, invented the TCP/IP protocol on several weeks ago. And part of what both of them were talking about is that this is a tragic time. It's a terrible time, but it also has opportunity for dramatic innovation in healthcare, in education, in society. It's one of those rare global rallying cries where we can all get together and pitch in to make a difference and really change the world. And the four of you are doing that already. It's really incredible. And I hope that we can have an opportunity to continue to speak with you. Those of you who didn't get your questions answered, we are going to encourage our four panelists to re-engage with all of us soon via guest blog posts and interviews and things of that nature. So look forward to hopefully hearing more from them, and we'll try to get a conversation with them scheduled in 5 or 6 months once their next school years have started. Thank you both. Thank you all. This has been STEM Community Conversations from STEM at Home, brought to you by the STEM Learning Ecosystems Community of Practice. Thank you for joining us today as we discuss student experiences and hopes for their future with Jacqueline, Jordan, Barrington, and Annie. These community conversations will revolve around successful models and new ideas to support STEM learning experiences during and beyond this time of social distancing. Stay tuned to STEMecosystems's.org for upcoming shows, and please continue to participate. We will see you next time.